Yeah, I guess this is one day before New Year's Eve, so December 30th, 2024. Uh, we we got here Muin and we got here Jonathan. I never knew your last name,
Rachamimov.
Rahamimov. Where is that? Where's that
It,
from?
Azerbaijan, though it has become Sovietized and Russified.
Ah, I see Rahamimov. I see. Unique. So one of the scholars that I guess previously we've talked about was Ulugh Timur, but in this session we'll have to, or we'll review Al-Farabi and we'll check if Jonathan has any inputs on that. Uh, he's a historian, has his, what? He has his background in history, a lot of background in history. I could just give him some chances to review or like share what he has to say, and then we can move from there.
Hmm. Sure. Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind immediately about Al-Farabi is,
Well, before
well,
before you
oh,
even go into
yeah,
Al-Farabi, let's get to know who Jonathan is.
Yeah.
okay. Well, there's a lot, but I'm a student here at Brooklyn, well, here at Brooklyn College, but in Brooklyn College, I'm doing my history master's currently there. My background, heritage-wise, is Azeri Jewish. Though I personally have reverted to Islam, so I identify as Muslim. Uh, it, my studies do not do mainly in the Islamic Golden Age or the Islamic scientific age or what have you, but I have done a bit of research, and I'm very excited to having this conversation about one of the greatest minds. Um, I would say even of the Western world, even though he wasn't part of the Western world.
Hmm, impressive. Muin, you wanna jump in?
Yeah. Al-Farabi, like he was like the early minds of what do you call of Islam. Like he was before Ibn Sina, he was before everyone, and he was very he okay. So the thing with him um is there was a lot of books about like ancient Greece, and it was lost during the times. And what he did is he found those books and then he translated them, and then he did his own commentary on those books, and those books eventually find their ways to Europe. And basically this guy is the main reason why we have Socrates, Plato, and Euclid, why we have all these philosophers from ancient Greek due to this guy and his commentary. Like most of the books did not survive the time, but however, his commentary was like so detailed, so what do you call? Uh, like so like it was so much detail that like it almost preserved the books.
Hmm.
And
Is that true, Jonathan?
Well, yes, it is true, but some more detail on that. Uh, it should be stressed that without this man, without the scholar, we would not have much of uh Greek philosophy. Well, okay, like there's also the historical thing to be like a historian about it, that well maybe somebody else could have come along. But one just a simple anecdote to showcase how much work the Islamic world done, specific Al-Farabi, but generally the Islamic world, is that when um the Umayyads conquered Spain in not in 711, but when the Umayyads conquered Spain, and they asked the locals, what signs you got? Like we have all this stuff. What stuff do you have? That's like what's the intellectual currency you have? And they showed them the Greek works, and they're like, we have Plato, we have Aristotle, we have this, and they're like, we have the exact same thing. This is what we have the exact same thing. And beyond that, I think what needs to also like what I also want to stress is that it was truly like the impetus behind translating was truly grand. Like there was like imagine being in the early stages of empire, having a massive intellectual sort of suppository of information that you have to translate to into the vernacular of so everybody understands it. That's no easy feat at all. But it's true. Like without Al-Farabi, I mean, like even the title you show, known as the second master after Aristotle. That's no easy feat.
Hmm. Interesting, interesting, Maureen. Yeah. Would you like to share a bit about the fun fact that was written? Where is that what's actually a not false statement, but luxury statement of the scholars of any age? They're like, oh, they don't want money. They want the glory. Is that what everyone could say about their scholars? You're muted.
Um, it's very hard to tell because some people like uh because back then what the how they got money was not because of what you call, teachers have salary nowadays. They used to get paid through like, court systems, like, they used to be a philosopher, they used to be like a teacher for like a specific person, like for example, a king's what do you call king's son needs like, tutoring or something like that. So they used to get hired for that. And uh, and also kings used to hire them for their libraries, for hire them for like, their intellectual thing. And they used to offer them gifts. But however, Al-Farabi was like, no thanks. I'm like focused on my own stuff. And like, for example, if we look at the Renaissance, if you know Michelangelo, Donatello, they used to kind of have a luxurious life compared to what Al-Farabi did, because they used to accept the gifts, and they used to like, I think Michelangelo was the sculptor, right?
Mhm.
And one of his sculpture is the person who was sponsoring him. I think they made him bigger than life, because you have to, they have to like toot their horn. I think that's how you say it, toot their horn to, get them to like you. So that's what they did. And I guess he declined that because, there's no such thing as free meal, because everything has a price.
Aha. Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
to to sort of jump in, I think it also can be seen in his ultimate like what he described as his ultimate goal of life. For Al-Farabi, the ultimate goal of life and of politics and of cities was to find what he called true happiness. So he did this very much for a very, I don't know if it would be like wrong to call it a stoic thing, but I think you could sort of make that argument. He did it for a very stoic reason, and you could see like sort of to bring up the God thing. You
So,
could see mashallah, you could see elements of what how he viewed metaphysical world as well in his teaching. So it was very much for a stoic purpose.
so based on what both you're saying, is as long as you do what you love, the payment is not necessary.
More or like more or less. It's like to sort of to use a very crude analogy, like money is sometimes like when you get a home, right? I feel
Uh-huh.
like the money is maybe represented by the bathroom. maybe crudely, but
Uh-huh.
but the bathroom,
Makes sense.
like if you had a house, you'd be like, okay, this is great. But if the bathroom didn't work, you're like, well,
Makes
uh,
sense. A
you
luxury
know,
of, yes, luxury of the money. Yes. However, in this sense, or the point of what we were discussing, uh, that he do it, or and fun fact, it says luxurious court life. He didn't want that. Uh, he didn't want the luxury of life or like luxury of that uh, times. All he wanted is to not only to teach, but to also learn and discover within its own, was it uh, understanding of that time, in a sense. Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
right.
also, you gotta remember he was a Muslim. So you know when like Muslims like they live their paths like the Prophet did, because Prophet did not really what do you call live the luxurious life as you can say. He lived a modest life, and then his main key point was like you have to be modest, you have to be uh like humble basically. So
I
Hmm.
mean, to jump into that as well, there's no background noise, right? You don't hear any background noise?
No, no
Okay,
background
perfect.
noise.
Well,
Unless you want some background noise, I'll put some
please,
Azerbaijan music.
please, please. But to jump in on that as well, you could see like again for the historical mindset, you could see it in his philosophy too. He had different definitions of um happiness, right? He had this earthly definition of happiness. And sometimes we conflate it with wealth. But he again did not argue toward wealth. He argued toward a very um again a very Islamic mindset, you know. You have to complete your deen by marrying, you know, you get this family, you do well unto others, you do well unto yourself. Of course, above all, you praise God and you make peace with your God, with Allah, and you keep going. Otherwise, for him, true happiness for him meant, in fact, a lot of it had to do with the afterlife. That the happiness would be achieved in the afterlife. That this earthly happiness is fleeting, temporary.
Hmm, okay. So I have it in the uh, in my research. This is what I found regarding where it says uh, as Muin was mentioning, he harmonized the ideas of Plato and Aristotle, right? But he summed it up and then explained it uh, in an Islamic way, or the way that how we would approach Islamic ways of seeing the world. So the mindset, uh, the science, math, music, politics, theology, and everything, the space around it. So makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, even speaking to that, like he understood the unification as coming from perspectives. So he didn't he unified the theories in a way that you would have to see it in a way that would be Islamic because well again I like the wording is I'm gonna go on a tangent but the wording Islamic even it's like to understand it you have to understand what Judeo-Christian tradition and all that came before, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So in a way it's very familiar because he pretty much united them well by saying this guy
Yes.
Aristotle is thinking about things in a very practical earthly way that is very important but also Plato this guy is thinking about things in a very theological way and metaphysical way which is also very important and combining those two factors is very much I think you know we're sometimes called as Muslims the middle nation that we're not very much 100% in this life and 100% in the afterlife, but we see this middle path. And I think you could very clearly tell it in Al-Farabi's work, specifically with unifying Platonic and Aristotelian philosophies.
Interesting.
Yeah, Aristotle was like more focused on ethics wise. Like
Yeah,
he had no like, religion into it. And I think was it Aristotle that had like utopia, idea of utopia?
I think um, he had the idea of Nicomachean ethics. So he said, like, basically, to be happy, you would have to find the middle ground. Like, again, the middle ground between a vice and a virtue.
Yeah.
While Plato had the idea of this republic, which would be a utopia. Yeah,
Mm.
Uh,
Because
I
when I
was
was doing research, I found what do you call Virtuous City, Al-Farabi's Virtuous City.
yeah, yeah,
Like it talks about like different categories of cities. Like I think there was like some kind of Sin City or something like that. Like
yes, yeah,
Sin City, and there's like the people are like the ignorant city, like the people are like who just don't know better.
yeah,
And there's like one more, and then there's like the Virtuous City,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
In
then
the
the you
no,
go ahead.
continue. I'm interested.
Virtuous cities like that, like when I was reading it, it was like saying it had religion in it, like like people live up to their high standards, but there's also like a religious satisfaction, like you're trying to like this world is like you could clearly tell like it's like very inspired by Islam because like he what do you call he likes the idea of like the utopia is like he's like but I'm gonna include Islam to it. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, it was like to sort of on my research as well. Like it's very like present in his work because he he because we have this like sometimes the in the Western world or in Western teachings like this idea of whether it is better to be feared or loved. This always speaking of like one or the other. So like knowledge or virtue. Like if you have knowledge, there's no way you could have virtue, and if you have virtue, there's no way you could have knowledge. This like weird. I'm gonna call it stupid thinking because it gives you a very like A or B, right? But with Al-Farabi, he thought that rulers should possess both, and that the ideal ruler is one who understands the universe to the greatest extent. And in that way, religion is very important because providing that the religion is like um is just or like is seeks justice and is the to him what would be the correct religion. We as Muslims we have this again we understand what he means by the Islamic thought or the Islamic way of thinking. But he says that the ideal ruler is a religious ruler, not necessarily a theocracy,
Yeah.
but a ruler who not understands what's going on in the cosmos. And also, this also implies that it's not just a religious ruler, but a scientific one as well.
based on what you were mentioning. I'll jump in here, where you were mentioning Aristotle's, I believe his the research on politics or his book on politics. That's one where he worked on it. That was his main research document, I would say. And not only that, uh, Plato's Republic, which was also his most researched paperwork that he created. Al-Farabi has also, as coming back to the point where, okay, not only he looked into those two philosophers, but he also created his own book or his own research, as we're just discussing regarding Virtuous City, where the king is the most wisest, the moral, with virtues to the justice and ensures the harmony is there within his own city. I didn't get the chance to read the whole Virtuous City, but hopefully after this, I'll make some time to read it.
Yeah, well, you gotta like think about it because what the leader is doing is setting an example. So that's why you want to like a leader who's the most virtuous, the like most intelligent. Because I mean, it's not possible to get all everything at once, but
Yeah,
in the ideal society, you probably want the best of best. Because uh nowadays we have like leaders who are like lackluster, like that's the
yeah.
fault of
Well, are you
democracy.
sure, mate? They're in this standard, they would be ideals because in order to get to this role, you need to have you need to be able to wear different hats in
Well,
different environments.
if I may jump in,
Yeah, jump in
yeah.
anytime.
So,
This is not like a
no, yeah, this is not the United Nations, but to jump in, I think that today's leaders have too much of what to sort of like echo what the research has. I can send all my sources afterward, but to echo
I'll
what
be waiting.
the researchers to echo what like the researchers have said about Al-Farabi is that he describes this political art and this kingly craft. And to sort of like what I understood it as, this political art is very practical. And I guess it's like wearing many hats, the ability to do that and be in a very practical, pragmatic environment. But this kingly craft, what Muin was talking about in the maybe the religious sense, but like the general like philosophy sense as well, because two things. Al-Farabi, he drew a parallel between the universe, the cosmos, the body, and society. So he thought society would function best as the cosmos function in the natural order, as best as the body functions. To sort of like connect it to this is that the government, he thought, should guide individuals toward happiness by providing knowledge of their natural duties. Whatever these natural duties may be. This may mean like here it's pursuit of happiness, I would
Uh-huh.
say, right? Your natural duty is to find what makes you happy, right? In this world, right? But he also said that you have to give them ability to put that knowledge to action. Now, like there's this question of equality of opportunity, equality of outcome. But he recognized that injustice lurked and that when when you have a ruler who's too in depth of his political art, he can no longer be kingly, or they can no longer be kingly. And um, again, it's aimed to achieve that true happiness, that they can not only be happy in this life by doing their virtue, but also be happy in the next life. Now, of course, in our society, many people don't believe in the next life to sort of have this disclaimer up front.
Uh-huh.
But whatever that may mean to you, it's you have to work towards that. You
Well,
have to work towards that
let
ultimate
me let
happiness.
me s- point out a few things that you mentioned. One,
Yeah.
where you said, okay, the government's supposed to lead by example or guide its citizens on what to do, right? So I'll stop on this for a couple seconds.
Yes.
Uh, there's a saying, or I believe it's Plato's or Aristotle's saying, where uh, essentially this democracy that we have, right, where
Yeah.
everyone has the ability to vote, or would you call that democracy? But okay, nonetheless, everyone currently everyone has the ability to vote, right? As long as you're the U.S. citizens, you have an ability to vote. But and I believe Aristotle who mentioned this, you need to earn the ability
Yes.
to be able to vote. So
Yes.
does this make sense in a way? So were you mentioning the government needs to advise or
Okay.
like lead its people in order
So
to right path? So is the right path is showing them, okay, go get your at least master's or PhD in order to have an ability to vote. But in this sense, only they could uh, skyrocket the was it the education prices, and then not everyone will be able to was it go get educated. Will that lose?
so I'm sure that like Muin will also like could see this or like uh, jump in on this as well. but because of just the similar research. But the to to Plato and Aristotle, because when like whether we like it or not, the main ideal, or like I don't even know what you would call it, aspect to the American system or even to the Western system is this over reliance on democracy. And I say over reliance because we are not a democracy, we're a republic. And Plato even said democracy is a ship run by fools. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the goal for the philosophers is not a city wherein people choose their leaders. And it's sometimes scary to think about it like that, but it makes sense. Like if if for example in Germany, right, their healthcare is run by doctors. That's an amazing thing. Here the healthcare is run by businessmen, right? So it's like, well, which one do you want? This is democracy. This is doctors. Like I'd rather like doctors. Like let doctors have my own healthcare. But it's also like the fact that for Al-Farabi, and this what like our society would be seen as a minimum city because it only provides us with the basic necessities we need to live in this environment. Now, like again, you could argue that this is not a basic necessity, but truth being, in our technological world, it is. You could argue that a computer is not a basic necessity, but truth being, in our technological world, it is. So I suppose what I'm trying to get at is like for him, it's more complex. Like the government needs to, and there's no clear answer. Like the government needs to function in a way where citizens can reach their greatest potential.
Mm, okay. Um, yeah, what I was saying is just hypothetical, like somewhat hypothetical. Like this
Yeah.
is what I read, this is what I researched. And yeah, totally makes sense. Uh,
Oh,
we,
and
yeah,
sorry
go ahead,
to
go ahead.
like because something I remembered is also that very important for Al-Farabi is that the parts of the city and its classes, its different classes, are united by love. And like, and again, in a very like in today's world, the idea of love has gone very far, very far. But there's a way that the Greeks describe love as agapic, meaning this unconditional love that, say, like God would have towards us, or we have towards God, or we have towards our mother, our father, our sister, our brother, our friends, our brothers in Islam. But they're united by love and maintained by justice. So that love in a city is taken by sharing virtues. So for example, um I'm gonna give credit to Muin for a minute, right? Muin showed me or like opened or like gave me access to the Islamic world, right? Like gave me open like made that first push, and on that way I ended up reverting to Islam, right? And that way he shared a virtue with me, and as such we are united by the Islamic Brotherhood. Now, of course, it doesn't have to like again in this world, in the secular world, it doesn't always have to be an Islamic Brotherhood, but the fact that it can happen showcases that it can happen across the board.
Mhm. Okay, okay. Muin, what do you got to say to your brother Jonathan?
No, I agree because I think because what Virtuous City is like an ideal society. So in an ideal society, he very like incorporated a lot of Islamic theology in it. So you want the leaders to be upright, you want them to be just, and you want the citizens to be hold the similar values. You want them to be upright, you want them to be just, and you want them not to be, nationalist. Like, you don't want them to be like a nationalist. Rather, you want them to be united towards from like maybe Islam. Because what do you call Islam doesn't really like nationalism. It likes, when you like your brother because who they are, like you like them because what they are or how they what kind of person they are. I think that's one of the points. I think I agree with it. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, well,
Okay. Yeah.
I
Just
mean,
to.
just to quote like on that point again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but to quote on that point in the Quran, I don't remember where, but it says like you will not get what you God Allah speaks. You will not get what you will get until or like you will get when you want for your brother what you want for yourself.
yeah,
Uh, wish well, wish well for others, and that is what you
Exactly.
will get. Uh-huh.
Exactly.
I see. Yeah, that's nice. So, we've just looking into the time. We got not much. We got like five somewhat minutes,
yeah,
and we overall talked about Al-Farabi's political theory, the philosophy, where he got his ideas from. Uh, One of the things that I want to point out before we move forward to another section of Al-Farabi is one of his, or not his students, but the people that followed after Al-Farabi was uh, Ibn Sina.
yeah,
So
Yes.
that was one of the things. So we haven't discussed about his another book that's called uh, Kitab al-Musika
Oh yes.
yeah.
al-Kabir. That's
It's
what it
very
is.
interesting.
Huh. The Great Book of Musics. You guys done any research on it?
Yes. It's very well to like to preface this. Al-Farabi considered that art combining with music was a field that unlike other fields had a very specific effect on the soul. In a way that like for example, you hear a sad song and you want to cry. No other thing can really do that besides like maybe books or TV, right? So this like and of course back then TV wasn't a thing.
Uh,
So music for him functioned similarly as thoughts do.
hmm. A place where your mind could wander off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
I think there's like a saying of him, like he used to be so good at, like, I think playing I think nai or some kind of flute or something like that, or something. Like he could make people fall into like a deep sleep with just playing it. Like,
Yes. And I think what's interesting from this perspective, or at least from all like also an Islamic perspective, is that oftentimes I'm sure you guys have heard the hadith that all music is haram, right? We've heard that
Uh-huh.
hadith. Um, I suppose what Al-Farabi brings to the table that makes it sort of he gives you two types of music. Like he describes two types of music. First is that music of the highest degree is supposed to impact the soul, not to please the senses. So, for example, right nowadays you get like, oh, that's a good beat, let me dance, and like vice occurs, right? Whatever, like in the club, whatever you may have. But for him, I guess like music functioned as a way of calming. Like I would say, like maybe similar to Nasheed's, but like for him, it was very like there was something to it that seemed almost therapeutic. That's the word I'm trying to get. Music for him was therapeutic. It wasn't necessarily something that what meant to evoke like what you get with P Diddy and stuff.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. This is exactly what I have in here where I wrote down. Uh, so his research or the point that he tried to make is where he, uh, what the aspects of the math and psychology are united within the music, and that's where you get into this uh, state. I'm not sure if I put it in the right words.
No, I think that's very like that. That's a good way to describe it because for him it was reaching a state where like a state, a trance state or a flow state that you
state
could
of
like
mind.
yeah
All right.
Well, so he lived for what, how many years? 50 plus 20, which is 70, 68 years, right? Uh,
yeah
or no, or is
Yeah.
it?
I think that's about right. Yeah.
68 or 78. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
so he lived for a long time. Uh, with Jonathan, your experience, what happened during this time, around this like 900, well, throughout his years, or like what state
I
was the
think that
world
was
in?
the Abbasids and the Umayyads fighting, right?
Abbasids and Umayyads.
By
Yeah.
this point, after wait, did they just a quick Google search?
I'm looking at it. It is during Arab and Byzantine War.
Yeah, because I was gonna say at this point the Umayyads were like, for lack of a better term, kicked out of Spain or kicked out of Iberia.
My breakfast.
Let's talk about Al-Farabi's music. Uh, so one thing I found out is he had a theory of vibration. Like he thought the music traveled through vibration. Like there was like the pitches, everything was vibration, which is true. Like the sound wave is created because of the molecules in air is crashing, and that's how it gets to our ear, and then the bone like tingles, and then that's how the thing works. And I guess he found it out way before we had the actual test we could have tested. And uh since like we didn't even talk about it, we didn't even get to this, but like he was also like a math genius. And in his music theory there was like octaves. There's like the fifth harmony, but he had other ways of like there's octaves, sets do re mi fa sol la si do, and then another octave. So he basically categorized it, and then defined what is like the what creates harmony. And in his book Kitab al Musica al Kitab, or he really goes in detail in it. But like I didn't read the book, so I don't know much, but like he really talks about it in it. And then uh I heard like he was known, like he was his book was like one of the ways like music was kept, because his theories were like the fundamental to music basically. Like the through his like for thousands of years people were using his theories in music to make music for thousands of years, like 1,000 years. And then I guess 1990s music
I
evolved
lost you there.
rapidly. What?
They used the theories,
His theories.
uh-huh, to make a music theory.
Yeah, I mean
I
like
get.
to again to jump in, but what I guess is like they use his idea of how music can like be made into a math to
Hmm,
evolve that.
I see,
Like
I see.
he
Because
had
his book
this,
was about
yeah,
like how the music affects the soul. How can you make the music affect someone's soul? Because that's what music theory is. Music theory is like if you use a minor is like harsh. Because there's like a music, there's like a there's a tension, you're supposed to hold the tension and you release it, and that gives the dopamine. So his sense
yeah,
was more of like of like how can you make that more emotional, like connected to your soul.
yeah. Like his idea of music was almost like idea of animals. Like there's different species of music. Like um there's the rules they had, like there's rules of music, so principles of music, and then there's notes, intervals, scales, and then there's also a third, like he had different parts of music. So the third part of that theoretical aspect of music, or the theory of music theory, was how ultimately the rules and the species define what music was. Yeah, you can play an instrument, but if you don't know the rules and if you don't know the whatever, and if you don't know how it can affect the soul and those rules, you'll never really reach your great potential in whatever music you want to do. It's it's like almost like if you don't have the right variable in a mathematical formula, you're
Yes.
gonna get a wrong answer.
Hmm.
Basically he like laid the foundation of like music. And people like music evolves rapidly, and then for thousands of years his theories were like the fundamentals of music. And eventually people like invent new stuff because right now we have like different sorts of music. You know, back in 2017, trap was very big. Trap was very big, and like 3 years later, it became drill, and now it's became like UK rap or whatever. Like music evolves like rapidly.
Yes, yes. As souls do. Like it's very like it's hard to explain because it's like trying to explain to a blind person
How
what
to,
like the color red is.
yeah, yeah.
That is true.
Okay, so I guess we have more things to say about Farabi, but like there's too much,
There's too much. This
too
man,
much. So I think
this
this is a
man.
good place to
Too much,
end.
we ran out of papers. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. All my walls are covered in notes from Al-Farabi.
But one thing I could say, he was essentially in one of the, or in the picture that we had it shared before, it said Al-Farabi was born in a place where current Kazakhstan is.
Yes.
So upper or Central Asia, you would say.
Yeah, there's some debate on that. Like I hate to be a historian, but there's some debate on that. But we
You
do
are a
know that
historian.
he's Central. We do know that he's Central like Asian, which is
Uh-huh,
like
uh-huh.
because his last name Farabi or his surname or his moniker comes from a word to mean like a place where water irrigates very well. So like and like there's tons of places called Farab there, but the most close one would be Kazakhstan. Yeah,
Oh, I see. I see.
Mm.
Makes sense. Maybe he was closer to Aral Sea.
maybe. But
I
we
bet
do know
that,
like
bro.
he had to be close to a Persian place or a Persian speaking place.
Uh, well,
Valley, bro. Valley. Now the
uh,
thing is, everybody, back then, no, everybody could claim anything. Like, like
Yeah,
thousands of years, no one knows what happens. Like,
yeah. I mean, the U. It didn't stop the USSR. The USSR had a postage stamp of Al-Farabi. He was very like
where, like, which country specifically, or
um Kazakhstan, like
okay, okay,
most
okay.
greatly, but like the whole like if you had a Al-Farabi postage stamp, it was good for the USSR.
Yeah, bro. It's about claiming first. That's it, bro.
Yeah,
I guess
I
that sums up the whole Al-Farabi within the Golden Age of
Yeah,
Islam.
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
and then hopefully next time we'll get Rumi